You're listening to Potty Mouth Radio, the home of movies, music, television, and comedy. The following podcast contains spoilers and rude words. We watch a thing. We watch a thing. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to We Watched a Thing with Billy and Dave. How you doing this week, mate?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad at all, because this week we're talking about A Real Pain, a 2024 buddy comedy drama film written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg, a co-production between Poland and the United States. It stars Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin as Mitchmas, Jewish cousins who travel to Poland. It also stars Will Sharp, Jennifer Grey.
Jennifer Grey. I spent half the movie going, God,
who is that?
Is it? No, I wasn't. Who is it? I was like, I swear it is.
You even saw through the nose?
I'd already watched that shitty sitcom that Joey was in.
Wait,
no, not Joey. No. What was it called? It was called something like, it was like a Valley Speak title. I'll look it up in a second.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Chris Eigerman's this New York guy who just derailed the episode completely. Chris Eigerman, who I love, is this kind of New York kind of intellectual, arrogant guy who, through plot machinations, is forced to move to LA with it and share a place with his brother or his mate, and deal with all these LA people. One of whom is much like Dawson in the B from Apartment whatever.
Yeah.
Is playing herself, and there's a running gag through the entire sitcom that people that she meets don't believe it's her because of the nose job.
She really shot herself in the foot with that.
It's awesome. She was so good. I mean, she's still good looking, but she didn't need to do it.
No.
I'm going to look that up while you talk more about Nazis in Poland.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, let's get straight into it then. So the movie's been pretty well received. Kieran Culkin, of course, got the Globe for his performance in this film for supporting actor. And I
don't know why. He's fucking shit in it.
Are you serious?
No, of course I'm not. He's fucking great.
He is our favourite Culkin.
He's far and away. Far and away my favourite of all the Culkins.
I actually forgot that at the Globes, they split the main awards, but supporting is where they stop splitting. So supporting is not comedy versus drama. Supporting is just everyone up against each other.
There's no rhyme or reason. You've got some of them split, some of them not split.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, do you think that we might see a Culkin with an Oscar this year based on this performance?
Putting me on the spot to think what else we've had in terms of supporting.
I think he's got a good shot.
It's certainly timed well.
Yeah.
Just trying to think, what did we have in our best ofs? Best of 2024. All right.
No one in Nosferatu is getting best supporting. I know that was your number one.
Skarsgård.
Yeah, he's not getting best supporting for that.
See, a lot of my favorite acting performances of the year are in weird films or genre films, like Kinds of Kindness or Long Legs, or none of which is going to get nominated for anything. Yeah. So I think it's easier to pick who's going to be up for best actor than it is for supporting.
Yeah.
I genuinely...
Yeah.
Fuck knows.
Well, I thought Culkin was great.
I don't think he should, because it should go to Chris Hemsworth, but it won't. So I think he's got a good shot.
Yeah. Yeah, I went into this film knowing absolutely nothing about it, but I was already a fan of the cast. I really like Culkin. I really like Eisenberg. And I came out of this even a bigger fan of Eisenberg, because I think that this is written and directed really well. I'd love to see this get a screenplay nom. I don't think it's going to. But I loved this film. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, enormously. I knew you'd love it because it gave me huge Alexander Payne vibes. Like,
it's a very quiet film.
Not as comedic, but a very similar intimate feel of something like Sideways or Holdovers. Or so.
Yes.
And impeccably written.
Oh, so well written, and it makes
not only the kind of to and fro of their characters, but I think even though there weren't a lot of lines of dialogue, I think the supporting cast of that tour group were nicely fleshed out enough.
Yeah.
They each had an identity and they played their part in the dynamic of that group, especially Will Sharp's tour guide.
Oh, he was fantastic. He was so good. That awkward scene where Culkin loses it at him at the cemetery. And
then you get the make good at the end where he actually thanks him for it, and Benji doesn't even remember it because nothing sticks with him. He's just constantly just acting on a whim.
Yeah, gives this huge goodbye and thank you to Culkin, who was pretty much a prick the entire tour, and then to Jesse Eisenberg, just all right, see ya. It's so well written. I thought this was a fantastic movie. It's so nice and tight. It's barely scratching an hour and a half. To be honest, I think I walked out of the cinema within an hour and a half, including trailers and everything.
It's doesn't overstay its welcome at all.
No, but it's.
And I think.
Sorry.
Eisenberg's. I haven't seen his previous film, the one with Julianne Moore. I know nothing.
I actually
about
didn't. I assumed this was a debut. I didn't know that he'd made a previous film.
No, there is a. I can't even think what it's called off the top of my head. It's got a longish name. It wasn't hugely well received. I think it was just kind of 6 out of 10 type. Came and went. Yeah. He's obviously come along since then because this is very, very directed with a really assured hand. I think there's so much consideration into every shot. He captures time and place really well on their journey through Poland. There's a lot of, I'm sure you would have noticed, a lot of really nice tracking shots, kind of to give you the sense of the journey. And that one, I'll kind of jump to it because it's, I think, the MVP of the whole film, when they do actually go to the concentration camp itself. And all the way through, he's got this Chopin soundtrack to kind of, encapsulate Poland, let's have Polish music. So it's this really sort of staccato Chopin music the whole way through.
Yes.
And then the score just cuts out when they're there. And it is utterly silent, but there are a couple of specific sounds that are allowed through, like shuffling of feet and this kind of sobbing, and you just have them standing in silence looking at this enormous mound of ash and at the oven and at the giant bins full of old shoes, and then you just cut to them in silence on the bus, apart from Kieran Culkin, who is just sobbing uncontrollably. I found it incredibly moving.
So moving. And it's written so well and it's directed so well. That scene in particular makes really great use of almost making you feel like you're on a tour. Like the only dialogue in those scenes, none of the people on the tour speak. The only voice we hear is Will Sharp every now and then saying, "This is the oven." And then we just sit there and look at the oven, and then he says, "This is," and it's so well put together.
I haven't been, I now have even less desire to go on what would be an important but very difficult holiday.
Yes,
the feeling that you get in as a viewer of this film, watching them standing in silence, sort of almost uncomfortably, you can hear some of them in the back of their mind. You can hear them going, "Is it inappropriate if we move on yet? How long do we have to stand here? I don't want to be disrespectful, but this is really, really emotional and uncomfortable." And one of the only sounds you get there is kind of the shuffling of feet as people are growing increasingly uncomfortable.
I just found the whole film so well written. The way that it swings between the comedic moments and the dramedy, and like you say, it's not like this is an overly funny film, but when it's funny, it's funny. Like the scene where Culkin is going off at the cemetery, I found really funny. The scene where he convinces the entire rest of the tour to go up and pose with the statues, and Eisenberg is there juggling all these phones. It's
painfully self-conscious. His character, and all he it's like he's slowly losing a battle of wits, because one by one, everyone else just goes up until he is holding like 9 phones, taking everyone's photos.
Yeah. And this is what I love about this film, is that it's definitely what you would call a character piece. Like it's set over only a handful of days. There's not a huge amount of story other than these two cousins are on this tour together, and that's kind of it. But what I love about it is that traditionally, I don't even know if you could look at this film and say who the protagonist is. Like, I think you would say that the viewpoint that we're taking for the film is Jesse Eisenberg. We open with him, we close with him. Yeah. But traditionally, your protagonist has growth and changes over the course of... And what I love about this film is he kind of doesn't. You almost expect him to. Exactly.
They have an arc. They end up where they started.
Yes, and you expect this film to go and you expect the experience of them being together and you know, seeing this stuff to change them, and it doesn't. And that is what I absolutely love about this film. Like, even at the end, it's small things. When Eisenberg invites Culkin over for dinner, and in any other film he'd go and they'd catch up, and instead he just sits at the airport alone watching. Yeah. And it's just, I think it's so well written and put together.
I mean, I think there's a big question mark over the ending of the film anyway, as to, because we find out that Benji has attempted suicide recently.
Yes.
He hasn't dealt with the loss of the grandmother, who's the only person. He's a loser in life. He still lives in his mum's basement or whatever.
Yeah.
He's got no job. He's got no ambition. He's got no goals. He's this gregarious outgoing. Kind of get a sense that he might be bipolar, because he's certainly got manic highs and manic lows.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to remember them.
Yeah, exactly. And he's just literally living in the moment. And has no sense of the impact of his actions on the people around him, to the point where he doesn't even remember those interactions.
Yeah.
Eisenberg is initially he's kind of your Woody Allen, and
I think right through to the end, he's very Woody Allen. Yeah.
He's but without the kind of comedy. He's got the huge neuroses and lack of confidence. He uncomfortable in crowds. He's very stuttery and New York Jew. But without the kind of wittiness of a Woody Allen.
Yeah.
So he's just neuroses without any comedy.
Yeah.
But you find out later he's got a wife, he's got kids, he's got there's a family life. He's there is more to him.
Yeah.
Than meets the eye. But there's only a couple of moments where it's like the dam cracks and all the repressed emotions come up, and you realize just what he's bottling in, still dealing with his, and they're more like brothers than cousins, even though they're very different. And he has not dealt with Benji's suicide attempt at all.
No. And the whole film, especially towards the back half,
twice.
Benji's he's like, you used to cry at everything and it was awesome. And Eisenberg's like, why would that be awesome? Why would I want to keep crying about everything? And that's what I love.
And oblivious to the fact that the reason he's not crying at everything now is because there is too much to cry about now. And if he starts, he can't stop. And that's Benji's fault.
Yes. Yeah. Oh man, I loved this film. As you said, it's really interesting that the characters themselves are not funny. Given how dire some of the situation is, like you mentioned, we're in concentration camps, we're looking at these historical places where Jews were repressed and killed, and yet you could almost describe this as a sitcom. Any moments that are funny are very situational. It's not the characters cracking jokes like in a Woody Allen film. It's stuff like poor bloody Jesse Eisenberg having to take photos of everyone at the monuments and the way that grows and develops. And like, it's those little moments like that bring the humor, which is, I think, actually really hard to do. Like, to not just have the characters, especially because they do have such chemistry and camaraderie between them, to not have the humor come from just Culkin cracking Culkin style jokes like in Succession. I think it's a real triumph how funny this film is at times.
I think Eisenberg's done a great job with the writing of it, because, as you say, I mean, there are deliberate things that are worked in to kind of lighten what would otherwise be a very heavy piece.
Yeah.
Like the fact that, well, look at the character, look at Benji. That's the kind of guy that smokes a lot of weed. So let's have him get high a couple of times.
Yeah.
But let's have the first one funny and the second one devolve into a really emotional conflict because of that's what's happened over the course of these few days.
Yeah.
And we'll have miss the train stop, and Benji just not think it's a big deal. He didn't want to wake him up. So he's like, oh, well, that's thoughtful, but you're also, fuck, I would hate to travel with you.
Yeah, yeah.
But then we'll flip it by having, when they finally catch up with people, it's just another instance of where kind of Benji's the reason for this, but David's the guy that's kind of getting the blame for it.
That feels bad about it. Yes,
yeah.
Yes. Everyone.
Clever.
Yeah. Same. I really loved this movie. I thought it was so well put together. You mentioned the score before, the soundtrack, which from memory I don't think there's any original music. It was all very classical pieces, it was just fantastic.
What do they listen to in Poland? Well, who's the most famous Polish guy? Yeah, it's all Chopin all day.
Yeah, but it's just another example of just how well put together this film is in its simplicity. Like, this to me is an example of beautiful simplicity. It's short, it's tight, you've got very limited characters. Like, realistically, you could have just pretty much had the two characters the entire time. But the addition of the tour guide and the rest of the tour, like you say, they're not actually in it all that much. But they all add to it. The camera work in this film is beautiful, and it's not something most people would notice because it's not showy.
I thought it's really, really good.
But it's not showy and over the top. But that's not the point of good cinematography. Good cinematography should serve the story, and that's what this does.
You should only notice it really in hindsight, unless it's unless it's the explosion in Oppenheimer where you can't help but go, "Wow."
Yeah.
Normally, if you get to the end of like a less epic Roger Deakins film, it's only afterwards that you go, holy fuck, he's good, isn't he?
Yeah.
You shouldn't be sitting there going, oh, look at the angle.
Yes.
Because that means that the rest of the film's not working.
Yep. But the cinematography in this film is so good. It makes perfect use of locked off shots when needed, handheld camera when needed. Any amateur filmmakers out there, pay attention to this film, because this is an indie film done right. The problem is that cameras have progressed to the point where it's really easy to make a pretty shot. Lenses have gotten cheaper and better, and most people think of a good shot as, lots of bokeh, blurred out.
Yeah.
But look at that opening shot of Jesse Eisenberg sitting in the airport. It's a fairly flat shot. There's not a lot of depth there or anything. You want to know the environment. You want to know he's in an airport. I think that this is so beautifully shot and put together, and honestly, it's a lesson for indie filmmakers to look at this.
Oh, yeah. Pay attention to how the camera moves and doesn't move. Like, and I think I said something along the lines of the ending of this being a bit of a question mark.
I was going to come back to that and ask what you meant.
I sat for a good 10, 15 minutes after this, wondering whether
Benji had a home to go home to.
Well, is he not going with David because he still intends on killing himself?
Right.
At the beginning of the film, he's already at the airport. You expect him to be the guy that rocks up.
I love that the film is bookended, yes, and it ends with the exact same shot, even with the title card coming up again.
In the beginning, it's quirky.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, yeah, you can hang around here. There's fucking weird people
everywhere. And by the end,
you
feel sad about it.
He says almost the same words at the end, but now it's like, God, do you not have a bed to go to?
Yes, you don't believe it at the end. Yeah.
Are you are there interesting people there because you literally have no friends? The high point of your future goals are helping some other fucking dude shingle his roof or something.
Yeah.
You have nothing to do. Is this as good as your life gets?
Yeah.
And you get this awesome, because the thing that reminded me was you talking about the camera work.
Yeah.
Where you expect the camera to just kind of come in and settle on him sitting there, it doesn't. It goes past him and it goes around the next row of seats and then comes between two people to sort of you sort of zoom in on him surrounded by people that he's not connected to. Yeah. And that little camera movement does so much. That's what left me feeling, holy shit, this guy is alone in the world. I genuinely think he might still be going to kill himself.
Yeah, it's such a sad ending. Same, because it's like, wow, he could be having dinner with his cousin and nephew and stuff right now, and instead, and you're right, he says the exact same word. He's like, it's a cool place to hang out. You never know who's around. You meet people. And you don't believe it. You feel so sad about it. And then that final shot, where he's not talking to anyone. He's not connecting with anyone. He's kind of looking around, like
hesitantly looking around, almost as if he wants to talk to people, but he doesn't.
It's almost like role play.
And he can't. He will never overcome that.
Yeah.
And his portrayal of this. I mean, I'm more. The more we talk about, I'm more convinced he's meant to be bipolar, because the highs and the lows are so extreme with very little in the middle.
He was fantastic. I saw an interview with him and Eisenberg. I can't remember what show it was on. Who's the British dude who interviews everybody?
Graham Norton.
Graham Norton. I think it was on Graham Norton, where Eisenberg was saying that he wrote the role for Culkin. But he'd never actually seen him act. He'd never watched Succession. He'd met him like once or something at a gathering or some Hollywood party, and he was like, oh, that's it. And so he wrote the role specifically for him, and he actually pulled out of the film about 2 weeks before filming, and then I don't know what made him come back to it. But I tell you what, it's just made me so much more appreciative of him as an actor. And he was talking about, his method of acting. He's not very good at remembering lines. He kind of rocks up. He's like, oh, what are we filming today? I'm sure he'd be an absolute shit to work with. But
as much as he would be the world's worst travel companion.
Yeah. But his performance in this film is so good. Honestly, I have to ask. So obviously you only watched this week after recording our best of. Would this have slipped in there, or would this still have been just outside the 5 for you?
Oh, look, it would have still been outside the 5, but it would have been in the 10.
That's where it was for me.
That's the main thing, because I love Night Shift so much. This is certainly a better film than Night Shift. And for most people, I would say see this before you see Night Shift. But this is it's really hard to find any fault with this whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see what Eisenberg does next.
I'm really glad he's moving into directing, because I think he's an intelligent guy and he's obviously got a talent for it.
Yeah.
But that he's, I don't know, just doing different stuff. I've kind of liked the variations, because initially, because Social Network was so big, and he's a very particular, he's kind of like a Bateman in that, his persona is so clearly defined in his voice and face and movements and everything.
You brought up Woody Allen before, and it's a very
But since kind of the first few years, when that was the sense I got, he's done some cracking things like I don't know if you've seen things like Vivarium, or which is like a weird, quirky sci-fi horror with him and Imogen Poots.
Yeah, right.
They move out to this like a cookie cutter new estate, but they're the only people there in this house, and then when they go to leave they can't, and they end up living there for years with no one else there. It's fucking weird and creepy. Really good. He did a wasn't called Clone, might have been called Duel.
I know the one you're talking about, where he played the two roles.
Yeah, he's done some really, really good stuff that's under the radar genre stuff that's doesn't get seen by a lot of people. So no, I'm really glad, and I hope he gets some accolades for this. I really do.
So I would love to see this get a screenplay nomination. I don't think that it will, but I would love to see it happen.
At least that one they split in two, so you've got more of a shot because more people get nominated. I don't think he'll get a nomination for director, even though I think it's pretty bloody well directed. But I think Culkin will get a nom, and I think I think the screenplay might get it. It's the sort of thing that they throw like Holdovers. It's the sort of thing they throw nominations for writing to, because the big things aren't going to get writing nominations, so they can give them a bit of love.
Yeah, true. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm 8 out of 10, I reckon. How are you scoring this one?
I'm kind of between an 8 and a 9, if I'm honest.
Yeah, right.
It's really good. Look, I'll say 8.
Nice.
First time, recency bias, but yeah, it's a strong 8.
Nice.
Highly recommended by both of us.
You definitely go see it if you haven't seen it. And any aspiring indie filmmakers, pay attention to how well this is put together.
Yeah.
But all right, thank you for joining us. Next week, we will be looking at our most anticipated films of 2025. And then the week after that, we'll be doing anticipated TVs. So
yeah, tune in for both of those so you know what to do for the rest of the year.
Yeah, go join the Facebook listener community and we'll catch you next week.
Cheerio.